Hello, my friends, and welcome to a very different episode on this channel. As you may know, I live in Riga currently, and today they are celebrating their 100th anniversary in Latvia. And so I thought, what better way to get to know this place than to revisit the last 100 years of Latvia. So the ideas of an independent Latvia have been around since the 1850s, but it was only after World War I where they actually became independent. And with that said, let's go back in time.
Like I mentioned earlier, the idea of an independent Latvia didn't appear out of thin air. But before we get to Latvia's declaration of independence, it's time for some context. In August of 1914, Germany declares war on Russia, occupying Korzeme the following year, dismantling and shipping most factories to Russia. Migration of refugees begins as well as enrollment of volunteers into Latvian riflemen battalions. On the 2nd of March 1917, Tsar Nicholas II abdicates as Russian Tsar. The same year, the February Revolution starts democratization process in Russia. Between March and May the same year, the provisional land councils in Vidzemes, Kurzeme and Latgale are established. They support a united autonomous Latvia within Russia. In late November, the Soviet of Workers, Soldiers and Peasants declares Soviet rule in Latvia in Valka. The Latvian Provisional National Council, a union of political organizations that support Latvian independence, is established a week later. On the 6th of December, units of the 6th Tukums Latvian Riflemen Regiment arrive in Petrograd to guard the government from Soviet Russia led by Lenin. And then the German army occupies all of Latvia towards the end of February 1918. On the 11th of November the same year, World War I ends, but the German army units remain in Latvia. A week later, on the 18th of November 1918, the People's Council of Latvia declares the Independent Republic of Latvia. The same day in Riga, the Republic of Latvia is proclaimed, and the Latvian Provisional Government, led by Kārlis Ulmanis, is created. Roughly a month later in Moscow, the Latvian Socialist Soviet Republic is proclaimed. On the 3rd of January 1919, the Red Army invades Riga, and soon thereafter most of the Latvian territory, making the Latvian Provisional Government retreat to Lipia. 2 days later, the German military units and the forces of the Latvian Provisional Government launch a joint counterattack. In mid-April of 1919, a coup d'état attempt against the Latvian Provisional Government is carried out in Liepāja. A government loyal to the German militarists led by Andrejev's Nidra is formed. The Provisional Government led by Ulmanis finds refuge on a ship in Saratov. Until on the 22nd of May 1919, when the German military units, together with the forces of the Latvian Provisional Government, drive the Bolsheviks out of Riga. Fast forward exactly 1 month after the conflict and the Latvian Provisional Government forces have defeated the German units in battles near Sisis. However, it would take another 5 months before Latvia is reclaimed by the Latvian Provisional Government once more, exactly 1 year after the end of the First World War. As a newly born state, Latvia of course had a lot of new experiences, like the Constitutional Assembly, which first elected Latvian Parliament on May 1st of 1920, which later that same year passed the Agrarian Law, which expropriated large estates and divided them amongst landless peasants. European countries recognizing the Republic of Latvia as a full-fledged member of the international community on January 26th of 1921, and later that same year being admitted into the League of Nations. You did it, Latvia! Having their national currency, Latvian centimes, introduced in November of 1922. Having Parliament electing the state president that same month and debuting in the Olympic Games in Paris 2 years later. Latvia was of course not immune to the Great Depression in 1929, although it was not hit too hard. In 1931, the foundation of the Freedom Monument was laid, and on the 12th of September in 1934, the Baltic Entity was signed, to strengthen cooperation between Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania.
What follows is the authoritarian regime by Karlis Ulmanis. The then Prime Minister leaves a coup d'etat, dismissing Parliament and dissolving the political parties in the next 2 years, 1934 to 1935, and assumes office of President of State in 1936. Across the next 3 years, the government basically buys businesses and gets involved in the economy. But on the 1st of September 1939, World War II breaks out. Latvia declares neutrality. However, Ulmanis government signs a mutual assistance treaty proposed by the USSR, in which the USSR is allowed to keep military troops in Latvia. In June of 1940, the USSR occupies Latvia, following the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, an agreement signed by Stalin and Hitler with the goal to divide the sphere of Eastern Europe. Non-democratic parliamentary elections follow in July of the same year. June the following year, the Soviet authorities deport roughly 15,000 people from Latvia to remote regions of the USSR. July the same year, 1941, Nazis occupy Riga. 2 divisions of German military were formed in 1943 to combat the Red Army in Latvia. On the 13th of October 1944, the USSR defeats the Germans and reoccupies Riga. And yes, that was a Friday. Overall, the Holocaust claimed about 85,000 lives from Riga. What follows is Stalin's rule, during which 43,000 people across the Baltic states, rural residents and patriots or nationalists, are deported to Siberia. Partially, they were also put in gulags, which is like the Soviet concentration camp. In the meantime, in Latvia, economic infrastructure is getting destroyed, and basically Latvia has to start using Soviet farming methods. That is until the 5th of March in 1953, when Stalin dies. Following Stalin's death, of course, the Soviet rule continued. And while yes, this was bad for Latvia, the area of Latvia was actually pretty prosperous because it had maintained its infrastructure and educated its professionals, so that Moscow at some point decided, hey, let's make this our business area, or one of our business areas, and they opened many factories over here. But there were more job opportunities than there were actually people, because remember, people were had fled the country because of wars and, well, the Soviet Union, and so a whole bunch of immigration from Soviet states and Russia got to Latvia, being diplomats and military people, and so with more Russians being like in these deciding roles, the Russian dependency sort of was created. And so the ethnic population of Latvians in Latvia from 1959 with 62%, it dropped a whole 10% to 52%, meaning that there were about as many Russians as Latvians, with Latvians having a slight majority. With this sort of even split between Russians and Latvians, it was eventually decided that there were going to be two languages taught in school, Latvian and Russian. But also Russian got integrated into music, history, literature, and culture. So this relationship with Russia has been difficult at best the past century. So towards the end of the 1980s, roughly around 89, the grasp on Latvia from the Soviet Union had dropped a bit due to some of the Latvian people in the Soviet Union still latching on to that independent movement, and also the parties in Latvia were getting more and more pro-independent. In May of 1990, Latvia had their first democratic election again, and they basically voted on a transition period to become independent again. On the 23rd of May 1990, a human chain was created to show the unified vision of independent Baltic states. It led from Tallinn via Riga to Vilnius, which is 600 kilometers. And so roughly 2 weeks after, there were democratic elections again to sort of vote on how long the transition period would last. It lasted 16 months. January of 1991, there were some Soviet rebels that tried to overthrow some of the key positions in Latvia, but the separatists in Latvia fought back, and it was quickly over. So in August of 91, there was a vote for the end of the transition period because it had gone on for a while. And so roughly 2 to 3 weeks later, on the 6th of September, Latvia was once again declared an independent nation from the Soviet Union. As Latvia had been in the League of Nations before at the end of World War I, it was relatively easy for them in the early 90s to join the United Nations, and soon after that they jumped on board with the NATO as well. And now they're a European Union nation paying with euros. Alright, we're back in the present, we're back where we belong. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more videos on my channel, then click here by subscribing. If you want to see my last video, then click over here. Or if you want to see my most viewed video, then click a tab right over there. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.
So smart. made sense, I was wrong. Genau, dann, that's right.